Session for the December 13th board meeting to order. First on the agenda will be the pledge, led tonight by board member Tammy Sharp.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Downhill from here.
All right. Is there anything on the agenda we need to change, talk about? Anybody? Okay, what about the consent agenda? All right. Hey. Thursday night, we'll have, let's see here.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that the vehicles to be purchased were in the consent agenda. I'd like a little bit more information on that. And Mr. Sandvig and I have traded a few emails today, but I was wondering why we're not doing that locally versus going through the state, because I understand that we don't have to go through the state to get these vehicles.
Mr. Sandvig?
The last time we went out to bid for a driver's ed car in particular, it was difficult to evaluate the different options that were bid, what was the best buy, best use of our funds. And the other issue we had was dealers were not willing to hold a particular vehicle for the length of time where we have to go through advertising for the bid and getting it on the agenda, getting it approved. All in all, we have had better luck at getting our vehicles, both for maintenance and for driver's ed cars, buying them off the state contract.
Approximately how long is that cycle?
It can exceed 6 weeks. It can hit 2 months depending on the timing of board meetings. But the comparability was another issue that we faced.
Did they also look at the safety records for the cars? Because evidently, if we go through this bidding process, we're locked into the one car.
No, well, based on our experience, and we primarily have Nissan Altimas because Nissan was leasing us at no cost several vehicles. And then Nissan gave those vehicles to us year before last, I believe it was.
I would be interested to know what features are on this car, because this is almost a $20,000 car, and I don't know that I know we need a safe car, but I don't know if we need to spend that much money for a driver's ed car. And I don't know if we need all the features that may be.
Well, I can get more details for Thursday night.
I would like to see more, and I'm surprised that we don't have some car dealerships here in the area that would like to lease something like that to us, because surely that would be less expensive.
That has not been my experience, but I'll talk to you after the meeting.
Okay.
I'll add a little something to Mr. Sandy. With our driver's ed cars, when Nissan was donating them to us, we were putting about 35,000 miles on them every 3 years, which wasn't a lot of miles. And now that we have to buy them, I feel like we could easily go 60, 70, 80,000 miles on those cars and they would still be very serviceable. So,
I mean, I don't know, what's the depreciation on that? Because you know as soon as they roll off the car lot that there's a depreciation on those.
well,
We have, 6 to 10 years has worked pretty well for us to keeping the cars that long. And
That is a long time,
as
but-
you approach the Nissan tried to rotate them out at less than that 10-year mark. But yeah, in looking, we had mileage and years of all the vehicles that we had, and 2 of those replaced the oldest ones that we had.
Well, I guess if we are keeping them for 10 years, $7,000 a year would not be a lot, but it just seems like it's a whole lot for a car. I don't even spend that on my car. And I drive it on a daily basis.
I do, Mr. Chairman, if I have a question related to the same topic, but those cars then have to be outfitted, correct? For the driver's ed teacher with a brake, is that, or do they can't come that way?
I'm sorry,
Brake on the vehicle.
yes,
It has to
that
be
is
out.
added, that is an additional cost that we have. We will have to buy new ones for Rockvale High's vehicles. But normally, we move, if we are replacing a car, normally we can move the brake to that other car. We've also found some advantage in having the same car that our students are driving all the time. So that was a concern we had with mixing the others.
So will we see as a board that, and I apologize as a new member, I'm learning this as we go, but will we see that come across as, or is that something we do in-house? Or do we have that contracted out as well?
Typically will, we just, I don't remember what dealer, we haven't bought one in a year or two. I
Okay.
don't remember what vendor, but normally that falls below the threshold.
Okay,
I'm thinking it's about $1,000 if we replace, or move it to another car.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Recognition tomorrow night, or Thursday night. Okay, I guess we're at what, number 8?
We are ready for number 8. Approval of community use facility waivers, tab 2, pursuant to board policy 3.206, public education schools and institutions, post-secondary education institutions, private universities and colleges, governmental entities or agencies that provide benefits to the Rutherford County school system or have an in-kind relationship approved by the Director of Schools may request the Board of Education to allow an exemption from the use of facilities fee, which the board may allow or deny based on the details of the specific requests. I think that's back in your tab there, tab 2, and there's several of them there.
Mr. Chairman, if I can address a couple of things in regards to use of facilities, because we talked about this, and if you remember a couple of years ago, the board kind of revamped the way it handled use of facilities and the policies that govern the use of facilities. And at that point, the board implemented a policy to charge certain fees for kind of non-school related groups to use school facilities. And that was a new policy. It was something that had not been done historically, but it's something that started 2 years ago. And the fees are really pretty minimal and nominal, but there are fees in place for specific use of school facilities unless you're exempted. And the policy, which we're talking about here, which is Board Policy 3.206, basically lays out 3 categories of exemptions for organizations that might be exempt from payment of these fees for use of school facilities. And intentionally, when this policy was drafted, it was kind of drafted in a way to narrow the exceptions, because I think the board thought the use of school facilities had kind of gotten out of hand. We had had some organizations using school facilities for years, and of course that has an expense to the school system for utilities, for janitorial services, cleaning, and having doors open, things like that. And the board was trying to get a control kind of these use of facilities that had kind of been going on for very extended periods of time by a number of organizations throughout the school system. There also was a kind of a lack of uniformity within schools with respect to how schools handled use of facilities, and some schools were doing one thing, other schools were doing others. So to try to bring uniformity to that within the school system, There was a special committee formed that met about use of facilities. There were several meetings involved with it. I think Mr. Jordan was chairman at that time. And out of that came policy 3.206. And as part of that, that's where the use of facilities fees came from that we now have governing the school system. But there's a section 4 in policy 3.206 that sets up 3 categories of exemptions from these fees. And the first one is student clubs and activities of Rutherford County School, a parent-teacher association of Rutherford County School, organizations affiliated with the Rutherford County School, and governmental entities of Rutherford County itself. So as a matter of right, those organizations are allowed to use school facilities without any fees being paid. So they automatically get fee waivers for those groups. There's a second category that requires the director of schools to approve their use of facilities without payment of fees. And those are public schools of the state of Tennessee serving any grades between kindergarten and 12th grade are allowed to use our school system without charge if approved by the director of schools. So that's a second category, is basically other public schools in Tennessee with grades from kindergarten to 12. That's the second category. The third category is what you've got before you tonight, which is coming before the board, and that is a category which says public education schools and institutions, post-secondary education institutions, private universities and colleges, and governmental entities or agencies that provide benefits to the Rutherford County school system or have an in-kind relationship approved by the director of schools may request the Board of Education to allow an exemption from the use of facilities fee, which the board may allow or deny as determined in the sole discretion of the board based upon the details of the specific request. So, the items that are coming before you tonight, just for clarity, are coming under this third category of exemptions that I just talked about under the policy. So, and that says, basically, if it has to be another public education school or university or another governmental entity that's providing some kind of in-kind relationship to our school system that's been approved by the director for an exemption to be granted, but it is within the board's discretion at that time to grant or deny that request for an exemption. And you have a number of items that you'll see before you that have organizations that have requested exemptions from the use of facilities fees. If you look at this list, you will see and I guess the staff went ahead and gave you a list of everything that everyone who had applied this time, so you get a flavor of what the school system staff has to deal with respect to who's requesting fee waivers. So, and this is coming before them kind of on a regular basis, and if for some reason the board wants to change this policy or change it, we can go that route at some point and change it. But as it currently stands, we have the policy as it is in place, and with the policy we currently have, a good number of these groups that are asking for exemption would not qualify for exemptions. The ones that look like they might qualify for exemptions would be with Buchanan Elementary, you've got the Riverdale High Winter Guard, you've got the Laverne Police Department at Laverne Middle, you've got Laverne Middle, City of Laverne, used for a beauty and baby pageant, possibly the Smyrna Elementary Creative Minds Club. I don't know enough about that to tell you whether I think that would qualify or not. That would be something you want to check into a bit more. The Cub Scouts Pack 131. Those potentially 5 appear that they potentially may qualify for the exemption. So that will be coming before you Thursday night to vote on whether to give them an exemption from the fee waiver or not. They can still use the facilities, but all these groups can use the facilities, but the ones that aren't given the fee waivers will have to pay the fee for the use of facilities. So I just want to kind of bring that to your attention because it is a recurring issue that staff's facing and having to make determinations in that regard for basically every meeting that appears. And I think we've talked about maybe putting it on the agenda for you guys so you can make specific approvals for the items. If you want items taken off, you want to have it handled in a different way, we can talk about it. As far as this meeting this week, you've got these specific requests for exemptions. To the extent that we want to approve any of these specific exemptions, we'll need a motion to approve exemptions for these specific institutions and name what groups we want to name them for. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Reed, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So just kind of from a point of order process, in looking at these, it does look like we've got some that may or may not really fall into that exemption category. And the way it reads on our agenda, you know, it's got for the meeting on Thursday, recommended approval, motion to approve the community use of facilities seeking waiver as presented, which sounds as if it's the whole inclusive list. So
I think the motion.
how does that happen?
Well, I think the motion on Thursday needs to be, we approve the exemptions for the following groups. And then name the ones that we want to approve them for. And someone needs to make a motion to that effect at the board. If anybody wants to make that motion, and then we vote on this. And I don't think we have to do it item by item. But I think one motion could be made to say we grant this, the waivers with respect to Buchanan Elementary for Riverdale High Winter Guard practice, Laverne Police Department, Laverne Middle, or whatever you deem appropriate. If you want staff to come back with a recommendation for you, and say these are the groups what we think qualify, and then present a proposed motion for you as a board to vote on, that's something we can do as a staff. We can have staff do.
You know, I think that would be my preference because, and again, if they were all just really, really clear, it might not be such a challenge. But as you've already identified, there's a couple on here that, you know, kind of gray. So I wonder if it wouldn't behoove us to have some conversation about these tonight, since this is a work session, or, I don't know, yes?
Yeah, I think it would be better if we discussed them during the work session.
Well, yeah, and that's why I think we do discuss the merits or the ones possibly that are in question, so that the staff, if indeed that's what we ask them to do, to come in Thursday with a proposed specific motion. Obviously, we're not voting on it this evening, but that they at least have some guidance as to what our thoughts are from the work session tonight.
Well, that would suit me. Yeah, the shorter we can make it, the better. Y'all know that.
Well, I'll just go through these one by one, and we can talk about it. And then I don't know a lot of the facts behind these, so I'm not the one to comment on the facts, but I think staff may know some about it. The first item here is Blackman Elementary. It was the Tennessee Cricket League. Of course, I don't think cricket is a sport we sponsor in the school system, so I would not think that is something eligible for a waiver myself, speaking as a school board lawyer. But if I'm missing something on that, someone can tell me.
You're not missing anything on that. That would not typically be on the list.
Oh, okay, so I don't think the Cricket League will qualify for a waiver. The second one here is Blackman Middle School, which is Spotlight Dance Studio, run through dances. To me, I don't know that that will qualify for an exemption, from what I know. And
It would not qualify for an exemption under the policy.
Buchanan Elementary, which is Riverdale High Winter Guard practice, I would think that might qualify for exemption.
This is largely Riverdale's flag team, and it's run by a Rutherford County Schools teacher and the guard coach. So this would qualify under the policy.
So it is essentially that guard team having the opportunity to practice during the winter months?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Central Magnet, the church in Murfreesboro, these are church services and monthly potluck. I would not think that would qualify for the exemption.
It would not qualify under current policy, and consistently we've charged our churches for this use.
Christiana Elementary, the Tennessee Bandits Baseball Club.
This is largely students that are participating within this group. However, the group itself is not a team sport or a student group.
The travel baseball type team?
Travel baseball type team.
So I would not think that qualified myself anyway.
No, I would not.
Laverne Middle is Laverne Police Department. It is a SWAT training.
This would qualify.
Laverne Middle, City of Laverne, a beauty and baby pageant.
So this is a fundraiser for the city of Laverne, and they would be using our facilities for that and have requested the waiver.
I would think they probably would qualify under the one that allows other governmental entities in Tennessee to use our school facilities without charge.
Even given the fact that it's a for-profit venture? Does that have any?
It's sponsored by the City of Laverne, as I understand it. So if it's sponsored by the City of Laverne, I would think it would qualify. Smyrna Elementary, the Creative Minds Club, and this is the one I don't know enough about. In my mind, will be I don't know on this one.
This is an after-school program provided for free for our students at that specific school, Smyrna Elementary, and I believe that they're having a specific program on this day, and they've requested this use.
So I don't know on this one. So I don't know if it falls squarely with any one particular exemption. It's definitely a worthwhile cause, I would think. But I'm not sure if it qualifies within the exemption, what I know about it right now.
It's a 501c3, and they do serve our students, but I don't think it qualifies. It doesn't fit squarely within our policy at this point.
Stewart's Creek High School, the Cub Scouts Pack 1001.
We have consistently given a fee waiver to the Boy Scouts, and I suggest that we continue to under our policy at this moment.
At Stewart's Creek Middle School, the Stones River Football Club, FUT, and football, I guess that's soccer. It's soccer conditioning.
This would not fall under our policy. However, the coach is a Rutherford County Schools employee, and it does consist of a large number of our students. However, it does not. It's a travel team. It does not fit squarely within our policy.
I don't know that falls within our exemptions. The way it reads. So,
does that function to pay the coach?
The coach would not be considered a coach for. It's not a school.
For the school system.
But the functioning of the team does pay him or her as coach for that service?
I don't know enough
Okay,
about the.
okay.
I don't know enough about how the football club operates. To say whether that is the.
I mean, to me, at least at first blush, unless anybody, wants to differ on this, I don't see that as being any different than the travel ball teams. I appreciate the fact that we have a Rutherford County Schools employee that's going that extra mile and coaching teams like this, but it's not a school organization or sponsored team.
It is not. That's correct.
so those are the exemption requests you have coming before you Thursday night that the board will have to take action on to determine whether or not you grant exemptions for the one we talked about. If I heard of Ms. Moore's recommendation, perhaps staff will come back with a recommended motion for Thursday night, which the board can consider. And of course, you want to make changes to that, you can make changes to that to add or delete as you deem appropriate. Thank you.
Mr. Estes? Mr. Estes? And just kind of a notification to y'all. One of the questions that I periodically get, and it will be every few years, we do in our tax-exempt debt that we use to build these schools, I will occasionally get questions from the courthouse making sure how the percentages that we are using our buildings for non-education purposes. That does come up, and there are some qualifications to the tax-exempt status based on that. We have never been in danger, but just for you to keep in the back of your mind.
Well, we do let them use it, right? I mean, they use our facilities, we just charge them.
Right, but that still is in some of the reporting that we have to do, because we are issuing, the county is issuing tax-exempt debt. There are certain thresholds and all that. We have been all right. But I just want you to be aware of that. We also have that in the background as we look at how much our facilities are used by outside groups.
Anything else? Okay. Number 9, I guess.
All right, number 9, this is for information only, and Dr. Justice, you want to come up?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you tonight. Given the district mission is to empower today's students to grasp tomorrow's opportunities, given that the Blackman High School mission statement says that our students will graduate with the academic knowledge, career, and technical skills needed for success in life, and given some of the beliefs of Rutherford County Schools, such as learning promotes individual student success, collaboration between parents, the community, and the school system is vital to the development of self-directed, productive citizens. And creating challenging programs is paramount in fostering continuous improvement and high expectations for the educational community. We, Blackman, we are excited about this partnership with Redstone and this senior level program that ties in real experience with learning, academic knowledge with career and technical skills, provides students with marketable skills, and challenges students with integrated learning with the job market. Today, and you have before you just a brief outline of the school's program that we are proposing with Redstone Federal Credit Union. Today I have with me in the back Jeanette Knopfsinger, who is our CTE teacher who would be teaching this course. We have Mr. Ken Reed, who is an assistant principal, and he is supervisor of our CTE PLC. And we have Mr. Mike Panesi and Ms. Lori Cutler with Redstone. And then just to speak to you just for a second, we have Jan Bias, who's Senior Vice President of People and Culture, and Mr. Nathan Lombard, who is Senior Assistant Vice President, Schools Program under the Department of People and Culture. And they would like to come up and say just a few things about the program, and then we'll be glad to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Dr. Justice, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and the board, for allowing us this opportunity to tell you who we are and a little bit about this program. And respectful of your time, so just a few minutes, as Dr. Justice said, my name is Jan Bias, and I have the privilege of serving as Executive Vice President for Redstone Federal Credit Union over People and Culture. I also serve as the executive for the Tennessee market, so which is our Murfreesboro offices here, and we also have one in Fayetteville, Tennessee, that falls under our Tennessee market. So we're excited. We've been in Murfreesboro for honestly about 7 years. About 2 years ago, we decided we wanted to grow Murfreesboro, as is witnessed by our branches on Fortress and Rutherford. Right now, we had a little bitty office on Rutherford initially, and I hope you've seen our flagship office that's going up on Medical Center Parkway. We are extremely excited about that office and giving back to the community in Rutherford County. Credit Union has been around in the Huntsville, North Alabama area for, we had just celebrated our 67th anniversary, grown in those years from, I think it was 11 members with $5 each put in a shoebox on Redstone Arsenal, and that's where we were founded, and we are now a $5 billion credit union with 1,000 employees and about 400 and approaching 450,000 members. So very proud of what we've done, and you will hear that we are very much about community. I hope you've already seen us in the community up here, and you will continue to see us grow here. So I'm going to turn it over to Nathan Lombard, who is the Assistant Vice President. I've just promoted you, Nathan. And he's going to tell you a little bit about our schools program and what we're doing in the high schools and what we would love to do here at Blackman High School. Nathan?
Thank you for allowing me to speak as well. Part of Redstone's mission is to improve the financial well-being of our communities, and the schools program was born to help achieve that. We know that the youth today don't get a lot of financial education like we did growing up. They don't write checks anymore, rarely handle cash. So as a result, when they get out into the workforce and they're encountering these type of situations, a lot of times they don't know how to handle that, and they get unnecessary fees, they can mess up their credit. And so we've developed this program to help transition them and get them at the early ages where they can get some practical experience and hopefully learn enough lessons that when they do get in the workforce, they're prepared for that. With the school program, we actually plant working branches inside of the high schools. They're fully operated by the students. We have a teacher that will oversee the program. They don't do all the transactions we do at a regular branch. They're doing basically deposits, withdrawals, the smaller amounts, but it gives them practical hands-on experience of these type of functions. We train the staff during the summer. We also train the teacher alongside the students because we want them to understand what the students are doing, and they will be our hands-on oversight. We will partner them up with a local branch so that they're getting support throughout the week. We'll go at least once a week out to visit them and make sure they get everything they need. But we feel that this program will give them experience in interaction with others. We teach them soft skills. That's something they can use in the application they go into. So we're very excited about this program. We're currently in three schools. What you have in front of you are images of the students and the branches that we have in place in the Alabama area. The last two slides you will see are visual images of what the furniture will be in the Blackman High School branch. I don't have an image of that because we haven't done anything yet, but that will give you an idea of what that will look like. So that's our program in a nutshell. Do you have any questions about how this will work? Or is there anything I can answer for you? I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. This is done at no cost to the school system. We fund the build-out. We pay the students when they're in training. It will not cost you a penny. And when we get, I don't think we'll ever get here. I think we'll be permanent. But if we were to leave, we will restore it back to the way it was at our cost. So there will be no risk for you whatsoever.
Excuse me, when we met, I know it's been a while ago and I've forgotten a lot. Sorry. But in terms of access to account information, I'm assuming we're talking about there will be adults and students. I mean, it could be the teachers and the students both having accounts.
Very good question. What we will be doing is limiting the transactions to people that are in the school, the students and the staff. We do take great pains to preserve the integrity of member secrecy. That's part of our training. It is drilled into their heads over and over. We are treating this with the utmost of secrecy, and we will not share that even with the fellow student beside us. We also have mechanisms in place where we can see everything they do, including if they even do an inquiry. We have a record of that. If we see that a student is going into a lot of accounts but not doing a lot of transactions, we immediately have a conversation with them, and they can be removed from the program if we feel there's abuse going on. So that is a very serious matter that we take great pains to avoid.
Also, Mr. Lombard, and this may be a given, it's got the check cashing, but are they going to talk anything in the curriculum about how to balance a checkbook, and just because you still have checks doesn't mean that you have money?
Yes, and by working in this branch, these kids see what can happen, and we do show them what can happen when you have it. When we're trying to teach them, these are the behaviors you need to do, and if you do that, you won't get yourself in that type of situation.
I have an 18-year-old that has an ATM card, so I don't need to say any more.
And the beauty of this is not only do these kids get this education, but they will talk to their peers, and it can spread. They're going to listen to them a lot more than they'll listen to me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Needed to for any of their classes. So absolutely, they need to get it in high school because they're not. So we're doing that.
Could you talk about the training in the summer, Mr. Long? The training in the summer with students?
What we'll do is we will actually train them for a 2-week period. we'll send a trainer up here, and they'll get intense practice of these basic transactions, and we'll go over and over and do a lot of repetition. But when that is over, we have workbooks that we'll also do continuing, because we've learned that when they get out of class, if you take too many weeks before they start practicing, they forget. So we do have a mechanism in place to allow them to continue to practice. Every time they're doing this, we track that time and we pay them for that. That will be something that we'll find. And that'll be outside of the school time. Yes, and the teacher it gets paid as well for that training. They're right beside the kids.
How many students are involved in this?
What we tried to, what our model so far has been about 8. We find if we put too many, then there's not enough for them to do, and we don't want them standing around. So we've got a 3 that'll work in window, while 3 are eating, and they'll swap around, and a couple of others are working in the vault area. We try to keep them busy.
To begin with, it may expand to open in the mornings after we get going, and it can be a class. And so I think this program asked this question maybe for you, Mr. Swerlot, but it can be a class called Banking and Finance, which is a state-approved course, has a course code, or it could also be, and kind of what we are thinking is that it would be the senior practicum in that cluster, and they also are given a Teller 1 certification. I can't remember what they call it there when they, after their training. So we've asked Ms. Pilgrim to see if that could possibly be a state certification for an episode.
I have one question too about the loan payments. What does that, I mean, I would assume that would mean making a loan, so what are they stipulate? Okay, I'm glad to hear that. I was kind of concerned there.
About a faculty member that has a
Gotcha.
loan with its own, they can make the payment there.
Okay. Feel better.
We will not be making loans.
Would any of these students be eligible to work for you after they graduate?
Love to have them. Matter of fact, we have at our current locations, we have some that come and work on the nights and weekends as we can allow them. We pay them for that, and we do allow that, especially during the summer. And we've had 2 that graduated out of the program and actually stayed on. So we would love to have them.
Sounds good.
I have a question. Where on campus, Dr. Justice, would this be located?
We have a kind of a school bank right now. If you come in our front lobby, it's down the hall to right across from our cafeteria. So are you?
Not terribly familiar. I'm just wondering if
security. Or?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, so it is a very visible place in our building from several hallways and from the main entrance. We have cameras already in place there for other reasons, but they're already in place there. We have a school bookstore there as well, so we handle money out of that area a lot. So we have that, and then they have security that will also be installed within the building in the vault. So you might even
Sure, and I forgot to mention that earlier. Before we have cameras that'll be over every station. We can see what a student is doing. So we're watching very closely.
Thank you.
And the funds involved in the branch, I didn't mention this as well, are ours. You have nothing to add to it. All I need is a place and students. We take care of everything else.
This question I have, talking about the funds, is there any liability to the school system dealing with the money?
Not at all. Any transport of funds in and out will be handled by us.
Mr. Reed, do you have any questions that you might have?
I did see a draft contract that was proposed, and it looks, I think they were talking about an initial term of 3 years, which is kind of a long term. I don't know if this would work.
And usually we try to limit new programs like this a year, so because they don't work, we don't want to be stuck with them for 3 years. I don't know if that's something that, I have not talked to Red Stones, I kind of change the contract we have.
That has been,
Yeah.
that has been through your attorney.
Yeah, well, I'm the board attorney, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think there are some changes that there are changes needed in the contract, we decided to do it. So if you decide you want the program and want to do it, then I'll need to get the Redstone, get the details, get the contract, something that they're agreeable with, and bring it back to the board for consideration. So that's what we have to do. I don't know from a detail standpoint, how much cash is going to be there in a school at any one time. We know how much that would be. So it's going to be a ton of cash on campus. And a question like, and then say you have a student who misappropriates money and takes money, is that something that's going to be a liability at Redstone, or is that going to be at the school? And there's questions like that I have questions about.
That would be Redstone liability. To answer the question about the 3-year, the reason we have asked for 3 years is because of the investment that we're making to go in and remodel, to bring equipment, to bring a safe, our build-out cost runs about close to $100,000. So that's the initial investment that we would be making in your property. So to say after a year you can say go home, that's just really not it's not a good investment for us. So I will tell you, the ones we have now, we haven't had anyone that said go home. They're very excited about the programs that we have presented to them, and we are looking at long-term relationships as a result of that. So that's the cost.
How long have you had those programs in place?
We are on our 2nd year.
On all 3 of them?
The Hartsville is the 2nd year, Decatur is in its 1st year. This is relatively new. We also have college programs. We have one at Alabama A&M in Huntsville, a little bit different model, but we're trying to serve our communities and the students, and college needs it just as much as high school. And we are building, we're working on a contract with UAH right now, and we have Calhoun Community College in Decatur. So, and the contracts, I thought we had been through the contract on both sides, so I guess I'm caught off a little off guard on that piece of it. So certainly whatever we need to do to make sure that's appropriate.
Well, I think the board needs to determine whether or not you want to do the program first. If you think you're interested in doing the program, proceeding with it, and what my recommendation would be is let's get the contract, talk to them, something that's agreeable with Redstone, and work with the school system, bring that back to you for consideration to the board. If this looks like something you want to do.
Is there a bank at Blackman now?
There is a semblance of a bank at Blackman now. I just wanted the board to be aware that we've worked with Ms. Bush and their attorneys for months, and back and forth. So I didn't want you to think that we didn't consider the legal part of it, and I'm sorry I didn't know we had. I thought we had also spoken with you.
I talked to Ms. Bush about it. I saw the time. It still needs to be cleaned up some.
Okay.
If
So
we decide to do it.
yeah, so we'd be glad to continue to work on that with whatever you need us to do.
My personal feeling, I think it's probably a good program. I'd like to see Mr. Reed go through the contract and clean things up and then bring it back to us. As long as he feels comfortable with it, I'll feel good about it. But I think it's a good program that'd be something that would add to the school.
Okay, we
Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you. And these may be questions for Dr. Justice. I think you mentioned when you first started talking that this was a senior program, is that right?
Seniors are 12th graders.
There would only be seniors working in the bank.
That was my initial thought to begin, that it would be seniors.
But not now?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
No, yeah, that it would be seniors, that it would be that practicum year, the 4th year or 3rd year of their cluster in banking and finance.
Okay. So obviously we're capped at how many can work in the program. Will there be some sort of specific selection criteria that'll be determined if we have more candidates that want into the program, then
Right.
we have space for?
Right, just as there are in any of our practicum programs like HOSA, Health Occupation Sciences, the ones who want to do clinicals have to apply. And so we would have criteria for that. And I'd like to see it expand. I'd like to see us be able to open in the, do an early morning, but I'd like to start with the lunch time.
And from a logistics space, just simply because this is something that comes up so much these days with so many of our schools bursting at the seams.
Right.
And teachers having to give up classroom space and work off of carts. Right. It's not going to present that kind of concern at all.
No, it's not a classroom.
More question. Just again, from the legality aspect of all this, and I know Mr. Reed is addressing all that, but I'm not familiar with the banking industry. Is there typically an age limit? In other words, if you hire someone as a teller at one of your credit unions, do they normally have to be 18? Thank you, Dr. Justice.
We do have an age limit for a Redstone regular employee. We have, and we'll certainly do whatever she wants to do. We have used juniors and seniors at the ones. We have not gone below that. And we have, I guess we've had no one below 16. 16 is about the number.
So we're not going to necessarily require that the candidates have to be 18?
No.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions?
Just got one more.
Okay.
The total number of students can be involved with it, what was that total again? I'm talking about, we're going to have 8 students total within the whole program?
Within that one period, yes. To start.
So I guess you got 100 students wanting to do it. It'll be a tough decision. If that's, I guess what I'm going back to, we're going to have a total of 8.
8 students every day, the same 8 students.
Is that
To start.
every day or just?
Right, to start until we can hopefully expand the program.
Because it,
But it's going to be, I want to make sure I get this right. You're talking about, we're going to have the same 8 students every day? Okay, so. I understand that. I'm just concerned about the number number of students actually being benefited. That's my only, I want to make sure I get that right.
so we're actually not taking them away from any other class time. This is their lunch.
Our lunch period has a class in it as well as lunch. So they'll go to lunch for 25 minutes and then they have the regular 50-minute class period. It's all within our lunch period. So that would be their class for that period. And then if we decided to open another section to offer more students, it would have to be before school, so we'd have to run Mr. Spurlock a 0 hour and do it, the hour before school.
Will this just be for one period a day?
To begin with, and then if we feel like we can expand it, then we would again run the 0 period, and so it would be for 0 period is like 7:30 to 8:30 if I'm an 8:30 start. So it would just be before regular classes started.
But the period during lunchtime?
Is 4th period.
4th period, is that a block or a
It's a regular period, but it has a little extra time because you also go to lunch during that period.
Okay, well, what I was getting at, if you're gonna have a teacher with 8 students,
You would. A practicum, which
that
is
means
not,
the other 20 we usually have in class has got to go somewhere else.
well, look at the numbers in practicums. Usually they're a little bit smaller for the practicum classes.
But this is not gonna be an 8-hour-a-day class,
No, sir.
or 6 hours.
No, no.
Okay.
To start one, and if we did expand it, it would be before school. So we might be able to schedule a few more students in, because we've talked about how to do it, but we haven't talked with Redstone about that. So I hear you, and I think we could.
Any other questions? Is everybody okay with letting them pursue a contract with Mr. Reed and Ms. Bush? Okay. Y'all get that contract, suit y'all, and bring it back to us. Thank y'all. All right, facilities, Mr. Spurlock.
Okay, Facilities tab 3, Laverne High School pool requests. Laverne High School is requesting to relocate the swimming starting blocks to the deeper end of the pool. This same location was completed at Oakland High School by the same pool company Laverne is requesting to use. The cost for this work will be $10,500 and will be at no cost to the school board.
Any questions on that? Is anybody got, I got a question. These starting blocks have been there for years. Why do we need to put them on the other end of the pool?
Deeper water, right?
Deeper water, oh. Okay.
And it is a safety measure, yeah.
Okay.
In 1972, they were doing a lot of things different. Okay.
Any other questions on that? All right, let's move on. Collaborative Conferencing Committee.
All right, Collaborative Conference Committee, pursuant to Section 49-5605, the Board of Education is required to appoint management personnel to serve on the committee following a majority vote in favor of the Collaborative Conference. The following members have been nominated: Dr. Andrea Anthony, Dr. Kay Martin, Mr. Brian Lewis, Dr. James Sullivan, Mr. Ryan Nance, Mrs. Amy Patton, and Mrs. Nivea Serrano.
Any questions on that?
Mr. Chairman, I do, and I think, you know, for the purpose of our newer board members too, I wonder if this might not be a good time, since you're going into appointing this committee, to kind of, for someone to speak, and it doesn't need to be a big lengthy ordeal, but maybe to kind of Reader's Digest for us what the collaborative conferencing is, what it means, and one of my questions with this is, once it starts in earnest, which I'm assuming is going to be after the first of the year, and we have this committee and they're working with the REA, how are things going? What is the process for bringing things back to the board and keeping us apprised of those conferences? And
I'm going to let Ms. Bush speak on that.
Thank you. So you're absolutely right. This will get started right after the first of the year. If the board approves these management personnel members will act on behalf of the board in negotiations for a memorandum of understanding with REA's chosen personnel. We've received their list tonight. We'll include that for the board's information on Thursday night's meeting agenda. But we did receive that tonight, and they've elected 7 members. So those 14 people will go and discuss what an MOU will look like in prior years. at the point at which an MOU is agreed upon, it will then come before the board for a vote. The board can then entertain a vote. It does not have to elect to have the MOU. It does not have to vote to approve the MOU, but the MOU will come before the board for a vote. The collaborative conferencing will occur over the course of 3 years and will occur in several meetings, typically probably once a month, with our 7 individuals and REA's 7 individuals elected members. And it's a process. It is an interactive process, and that will be led on our side by Dr. Anthony.
What all, can you outline for the new members all the things that could include? I mean, just a few topics.
Yes, so it has in the past included investigations. It has in the past included benefits. So use of professional, personal days. It has included vacation days. It's included policies that we currently have that affect personnel, such as sick leave, insurance benefits. It can include a number of things, and it's very broad and very open for the members individually to discuss, but in so much as limited in what they can bring to the board. PECA, the act that prescribes what can be brought to the board, is very specific in what can be brought to you in the MOU. And once they get that in the final version, that does take some time. Once they get that in the final version, they'll bring it forward before the board for presentation.
So question for you, Ms. Bush, then the 3 years that you referenced, is that part of PACA? In other words, my understanding is what's happened at this point is the REA has secured the appropriate number of signatures from teachers that they need to request this move forward, which is what is happening. Please step in and correct me if I get anything wrong here.
Yes, that's correct.
And to me, I guess just kind of from an HR perspective, it's very similar to what we used to do with the typical union negotiations. You sat down at the negotiating table. But this is not an arbitrary or binding process. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the board does not have to vote to approve this MOU. They do have to vote to approve, excuse me. They don't have to approve the MOU once it comes before you. If there's something that the board does not like in the MOU, they can send their management personnel team back to negotiate further for that MOU. But you're absolutely correct in that it is similar to union negotiations. So if you're familiar with that process, the process looks very similar, and the 3 years is prescribed by that statute. So they have to come before the board in a similar process to what they did this year and ask to have that collaborative conferencing vote again in 3 years.
Okay, but the fact that this has been agreed on and is moving forward from this last vote,
yes,
binds us to 3 years, or does it have to be addressed, renewed every year?
I think I understand what you're saying. The process takes place every 3 years once it's been approved. So right now, we engage in the collaborative conferencing process, which can take 3 years depending on the parties involved. However, the voting process takes place every 3 years. Does that answer your question?
It does. So would the committees themselves stay the same then?
The committee term is 3 years. So
okay.
These individuals will be appointed for 3 years. There is a process if someone abandons their term or moves to a different location and can no longer serve, there is a process prescribed in statute that we will use at that time to elect a new member, but these are 3-year terms, and the members who were nominated were told that. They were told that these were 3-year terms. So they understand what they're signing up for. It's a large responsibility.
Okay, that answers. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Insurance update. No insurance update. Okay. Director?
I'll be bringing some forward Thursday night.
Okay. Ms. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tennessee Legislative Network. I think, first of all, I want to just remind the board of our meeting that we have scheduled with our state legislators next Thursday, the 19th. We have invited also all of the county as well as city officials and dignitaries to join us, not as a part of the exchange or the meeting itself, but obviously it's something that they have a vested interest in to come and sit in the meeting. So we're hoping and encouraging that as many of them as possible will come. When I say that, I'm talking about our county commissioners and our city council people and so on. I have been having some conversation with one of our legislators, Dr. Brian Terry, about the format of this and how we want to lay it out. So I just kind of wanted to give our board, and I have spoken with Mr. Campbell from the City School Board as well, that you may see a little bit of a different format, if you will, as to how we're going to try to execute that this year so we can make sure that we get as much, as the saying goes, bang for our buck as we possibly can out of that meeting and keep things on track and make sure that we're able to have the kind of exchange and dialogue with those legislators as we hope to. So I will apologize to the board tonight that I have not yet gotten anything out to you kind of describing what we're thinking and what I need from each of you, but you'll have an email coming from me in the morning, and I will also send it to Mr. Campbell requesting that he send it out to his city school board, asking for some input from each of you as to things that you want to see, topics that you want to see discussed. So obviously it's not mandatory. If you don't want to respond, that's fine, but if you want some input, I would greatly appreciate that feedback, because I imagine we're going to have a number of things that people want to see discussed, and we may have to whittle that list down. So I'm going to look at all of the results that come in from that and try to come up with a majority rules kind of process to keep the list as succinct as we can, so we're not here till midnight, which I know nobody wants. As far as actual legislative update, really nothing to report at this point. Of course, everybody's gearing up for the new session. I did speak with Ben Torres today from the TSBA, and he, of course, is very, very busy getting prepared for this next session, but really nothing to report at this point other than, as we all know, the subject of vouchers and the concern, of course, in the articles that we're seeing from our new governor-elect and some appointments that he's made to his staff, to some very key positions in his staff, by individuals that have priorly been employed by some of these very, very assertive voucher organizations. So we do see that as being something, even though we've been very successful the last couple of years in keeping this at bay, with our lobbying efforts and our conversations with our legislators, it's becoming pretty apparent that it is going to come to the forefront again this legislative session, or at least we believe that it will. So I do think that that is something, obviously, that we need to definitely have conversation with our legislators about next week, and especially in a venue where we're going to have the benefit, hopefully, of having a lot of our commissioners and city municipal representatives here to hear our perspectives on this and our thoughts and processes on how we need to move forward with that particular concern.
Oh, do we know how many legislators have said they would come so far? 2.
So we've only had 2 confirmations of legislators accepting? Okay. Okay. I'll get with Ms. Joyce tomorrow and follow up and kind of maybe send out some other communications, see if we can't emphasize the importance and hope that perhaps we'll improve that attendance.
Maybe we need to remind them. Thank you, Ms. Moore. Mr. Hodge, Federal.
I'll give you a report Thursday. I just got something yesterday from NSBA that about 5 pages worth. I haven't had time to go through them yet.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, general discussion.
Mr. Chairman, if I may have the floor. I apologize, I've done so much of the talking this evening, but I want to kind of kick our general discussion off tonight because I do think that we as a board have to start having some conversation about our whole rezoning process and some of the concerns that have been brought forward from the community and how we're going to address those prior to the January 7th meeting. So everyone knows I don't like to talk at all, so in an effort to make sure that I stay on track, I've prepared kind of an opening statement, if you will, that I want to present to my fellow board members. So, Mr. Chairman, Director Spurlock, and fellow board members, I want to speak for a moment tonight about our rezoning process, where we're at on it, and also want to offer some thoughts and observations of my own. I had hoped that this would be on our formal agenda for this week's meeting, but since it's not, I do think we're behooved to discuss it during our general discussion, given the fact that we do not have another meeting to specifically discuss our rezoning plans that's scheduled between now and our February 7th and 8th meetings, which my understanding is those meetings are designed to be a final discuss it and vote situation. January, excuse me. What did I say?
February.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we can wait.
Way ahead of the game, okay. Thus, to me, it leaves us with literally no time for the board to openly discuss these concerns that have been presented to us at our public meetings. I am troubled that we as a board have, between emails, phone calls, and the multitude of presentations that have been made to us at these public zoning meetings from probably what amounts to, I imagine, hundreds of parents and students, which in my opinion, some of them are presenting us with very legitimate concerns about very specific issues that we don't have a formal time as a board scheduled to address these prior to those January meetings. I think that this is doing all of these parents and students a disservice, as if we are going to reach any agreement that we want to see any of these situations fixed prior to another map presented to us at those January meetings, that it needs to be done well before the meetings at which we intend to finalize and vote on the final proposal. It does also concern me as a follow-up to these meetings and what I've observed, that we have many parents, and many of them have said so to each of us, both in public and through phone calls and emails, that there are so many of them out there feeling or having the impression that we as a board, that our minds are made up. These are the words that have been spoken to me, and that we're, quote, just going through the motions in these meetings and not listening to them. So, to me, I think it's all the more reason for us as a board to have some conversation, and if we need to do it tonight and on Thursday, then that's what we'll need to do, to have this deliberation, because I personally, as a board member, and my commitment that I've made to this community and my constituents, want these parents to understand that we have listened, we are listening, we have heard them, and that most importantly, we understand and we empathize with them. I have, as a parent, been through a rezoning with a middle schooler myself, and I feel their pain firsthand. I truly do. But I don't, and I think all of us do, to some extent we've experienced this, and we as board members are passionate about these parents that are coming forward. We just really haven't had an opportunity to communicate or express that to them. Now, with that being said, there's no doubt that we as a board have some very, very hard decisions to make. This is a huge rezoning affecting the majority of our county. And given that so many of these requests from parents, we know probably as a board that we're not going to be able to grant, I think it's important that we as a board be as transparent as we can in these conversations to make sure that we adequately explain to our community why we can or cannot make some of these exceptions that they're requesting. For instance, I personally understand and relate to the parents that have students involved and committed to their sports in their schools. But what I don't think is that I don't believe we have all of these parents that understand that we simply cannot, and I'll invite anyone to jump in and tell me if I've got this incorrect, because this is not my bailiwick, but we are not allowed to grant waivers, zoning waivers, for sporting reasons. In fact, the TSSAA itself does not allow it. So if we tried, for instance, to redo zoning lines to accommodate everyone that has a child in a sport that doesn't want to have to move to another school, we simply wouldn't have a rezoning, and we'd likely be sitting here with a near-empty high school next year. So difficult decisions and pleas. But that being said, I'll wrap up with this. There are two very specific concerns that have been presented to us over and over and over that I do think we can easily resolve as a board. And those are, first of all, the zoning line that moves Seven Oaks subdivision to Smyrna High School. The numbers do not convince me that it makes sense at all. and the subject of the BCA and the Blackman Collegiate Academy. And I'm glad that Dr. Justice is here with us this evening because, and this is something that when I get done, I think Ms. Johnson may have some things that she wants to share because I know she's been working probably more closely with some of our administration here talking about the numbers. But I'm convinced at this point that the Blackman Collegiate Academy has worked too hard and has accomplished too much for us to dismantle that program. And I don't think that the numbers of the Blackman students that are in that program, because, and as we've already discussed, I think it's pretty much a given, and perhaps I shouldn't say this, but I think it is a given that we're going to grandfather all upcoming seniors at any schools that want to stay where they are. So by the time you take away those numbers, I don't think the numbers of the Blackman Collegiate Academy, again, justify the agony that I think some of these parents and students are going to experience by having that program kind of taken apart, so to speak. So with that, I'll turn it over to any other board member that wants to give input.
Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
I also made some notes. I'll be very brief. After reviewing and having the meetings that we've had and meeting with families, it's apparent, and I echo what Ms. Moore has said, we can't grant all of these recommendations, we can't honor them. But there are some that are very specific, I think, that as a board I would like to request our board members to consider. Number one is the obvious grandfathering of seniors. I understand that siblings may want to be included, and I understand that there's a lot of other students that would ideally like to be included in that. That's just not practical for our growth in our community, and the unintended consequences and the time frame for which we would have to guess, essentially, how many students are going to be in what school at what time. There's just too many questions and not enough answers with the growth we're experiencing. So I would like to request that the board consider grandfathering seniors. I also, secondly, would like to request that the board consider leaving the Seven Oaks subdivision at Stewart's Creek. We've gone over this, we've listened to the constituents in that community, and we already have portables there, so that population will be a little bit larger than I think would be even feasible and fair for the students particularly. So I would request that we leave those students at that are in the Seven Oaks subdivision at Stewart's Creek. The numbers based on just the enrollment, what would be rezoned and enrolled, that would put, with leaving Seven Oaks at Stewart's Creek, it would put Stewart's Creek at about 1,844 students, and it would put Smyrna High at about 1,979 students. That's a little bit more balanced to me, and I feel like that's fair for growth in each school. So not perfect, but I think it's a better compromise. Finally, and I've prayed about this and I've toiled over this, and I've got to be very clear. I have students in the system. My family has experienced rezoning. This will be our third or fourth time. I understand the impact. So my children are all across the spectrum. I've got children who are in need of remediation and help, and I've got gifted students. My freshman this year is at Riverdale, and when he was in 8th grade, I can appreciate these students in the Blackman Collegiate Academy because his goal was to be valedictorian. He's going in 8th grade and he wants to be valedictorian. I think that this program, this BCA, what I know of it, and I would love for Dr. Justice if she could shine some light for us on this program some more, I think it affords our students a unique opportunity in our community that we should not deny them. And the numbers speak for themselves, so if you'll just let me finish here. The current proposed zoning changes have about 124 of the currently 284 BCA students that will be falling outside of the Blackman zone. I got to thinking about that. Well, that consists of 30 freshmen, 28 sophomores currently this year, 36 juniors, and 30 graduating seniors. The remaining 94 rising students will be zoned as follows. One of those students, considering they're not seniors, will go to Stewart's Creek High School, one will go to Eagleville, one will be at Oakland, two will be at Riverdale, and the 89 remaining students will be zoned for Rockvale. If you look at your numbers, and I've got some maps here for you, so we can pass those around, but if we look at the numbers that on the map that we've been showing to the families in our meetings, our current enrollment numbers for Rockville is concerning to me. It's a brand new school. I think we said it's going to be maxed at 2,300 students. Based on these numbers, we're looking at about 2,038 students opening Rockville. I live in that community. That community is growing, it's thriving, we've got subdivisions going up, and I know that's not lost on the board. I think Mr. Spurlock and his team have done a fantastic job of presenting this proposal to us, so I think it's a great starting point. However, I think that if we would leave Blackman Collegiate Academy entirely intact, allowing all of these students to finish what they started, which I think is appropriate and fair to their academic career, we would end up with Rockville High School would open with 1949. It'd give us some room for growth. We've already discussed as a board that we're going to come back here in a couple of years, 5 I think it was the number, and we're going to revisit this again. So I would ask my fellow board members to please consider leaving the Blackman Collegiate Academy intact. I don't have a child in this program. This school is not in my zone. I don't have kids attending this program. I am looking at this from a perspective as a citizen, as a parent, but really putting our students first. I don't know if we allow zone exemptions. I'm new, so I don't know why we don't currently allow zone exemptions into that program. I don't know if that's something that we can have a conversation about. Obviously with some caps on the amount of students, if Dr. Justice and the school would even be open to it, I don't know. But when I sit and I hear parents talk about their children having an opportunity to go to Vanderbilt, which my daughter would like to go, but the reality is I don't think that she's academically taken a pathway that will afford her that ability at this time. If she had the opportunity to zone exempt into BCA and qualified, I'm confident that would have enhanced her chances. There are other great programs in our district, but I would urge us to consider leaving it intact. It would balance out all of the school enrollment. It wouldn't put any high school currently too full, and the impact would be minimal at best. So those are the final recommendation would be for the SPED students to remain where they are. I do not favor and would not favor moving any of those students out of their current environment. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Just, I will say that my thoughts are along the lines of Ms. Moore and Ms. Johnson both as far as Seven Oaks. I had questions on that from the get-go, and I spoke to Mr. Spurlock on it, and in talking with him, he felt like he was good with it either way. So I know we went through we dealt with the Stewart's Creek issue, which they had to deal with it then. So I'm also in favor of keeping them at Stewart's Creek. Also in favor of the seniors. I know I think that's a given right there. As far as the Collegiate Academy, I appreciate Ms. Johnson giving me these numbers tonight, because my first instinct was allowing the juniors and seniors. But based on what you've told me, the upcoming sophomores, you're not talking about but just 30 kids, correct? Mm-hmm. So in total, if you kept the seniors automatically, all we're talking about is increasing it 58 students. And I'm good with the way you laid it out. Both of you laid it out. I do want to make sure, as far as siblings go, because I've been, like I said, I've seen this stuff trail for years, that, incoming, what I'm saying is somebody's got a sophomore and then they got an 8th grader. I want to make sure, I'm not voting for siblings. I just, I've seen it, I forget which one it was. It was Blackman or Siegel one. That thing trailed us for years. And, but I appreciate both y'all bringing up your comments, because I think we're in the same, it looks like I'm thinking the same way y'all are. So that's where I stand on it. I think that the meeting on January 7th, if I'm not mistaken, that's another public meeting. And the 8th, I believe we're coming, try to make some kind of decision what we're going to do. So at least the people coming to the January 7th meeting, at least they know how I feel and you two feel. I don't know about the rest of them.
If I may, Mr. Hodgin, to what you just said, yeah, the January 7th meeting, that's my understanding, is another public forum, which, and again, I think in hindsight, and we all have it, we all are really good at playing Monday morning quarterbacks. I can see from the parents' perspective, again, having been through it myself, where the fact that we don't answer questions or engage in dialogue or exchange with them when they're standing at that podium, you know, passionately pleading their case, we can't, because we'd be there until the same time the next day and we still wouldn't be finished. And I think everybody realistically understands that. But again, I still see that if the January 7th meeting is of that same format, which it's supposed to be, and then we're anticipating that we as a board will take a vote on all of these decisions and these zoning lines the next day, I think we have to have these conversations, because if we're going to request that Mr. Spurlock and Mr. Estes change a zoning line, or that this is what we're recommending from something that hasn't already been previously discussed, that we need to get that done tonight and or Thursday night. Either that, or we're going to need to schedule another meeting to have this conversation. So, Mr. Hodge, I really appreciate your input. Thank you. And I would encourage and be anxious to hear if any of our other board members have input on the things we've discussed, but also any of these other concerns that parents have brought forward, that we need to have this dialogue. I mean, as a parent out there with a child that's an upcoming junior, perhaps, in the BCA program, and I've got a 7th grade out there that I know wants to too, it's hard for us to do, but again, we have to do it. We can't, if we start making those kind of sibling exceptions, Mr. Hodge is right. I mean, you know, it turns into a no-go as far as the intent behind all of the zoning and opening up a new high school. So.
I've got one more question, and I'll hush, but my question is, if we wanted to vote on this thing Thursday night, somewhere or another, is that something we can do? I guess I'm asking the attorneys.
If you're going to take a vote on the zoning matter for Thursday night, you need to go ahead and post it on your agenda for Thursday night, have it advertised for Thursday night, so there's public notice of it before you vote on it Thursday night. I don't think if you want to wait and do that in January, you can do it then or have an additional meeting. But if you are going to take action or expect to take action on this Thursday night, go ahead and amend your agenda, add this to the agenda, advertise it, post it on the internet, have notice sent to the media, so everyone's aware of it before you vote on it Thursday night.
I guess, what's your recommendation?
I would give people more time, so if anyone has any members of the public want to have comments on it, I would give them time to come to you in January and do it then, and maybe postpone your approval of it in January to maybe the following week or next 2 weeks. I'm not sure how soon the vote has to be taken to meet whatever timetables the school system has. But with respect to the rezoning type issues, there are some of the most difficult decisions the board faces. As you can tell, there's lots of public opinions and input the board always receives on this matter. You want to make sure the public's had the full opportunity of being heard, and that anybody who has concern has had an opportunity, a full chance to talk to the board about it. So having said that, I think you should err on the side of giving plenty of public notice about it, and advertise it well in advance to the extent you can do that. And if it means postponing the vote on the first week of January or second week of January, move it back and have a meeting the following week or 2 weeks thereafter. Do that, if that meets the timetables the school system needs for the rezoning determination to be made. That would be my thought.
But I guess if we didn't put nothing on the agenda for this Thursday, and you had the public hearing on the 7th, you can have that listed after the public hearing, correct?
Having the agenda item?
Yeah.
You can have the agenda listed after the public hearing, yes.
As discussion.
As a discussion, yes.
Come back, whatever, the 8th or whenever it is, and vote. You know, I can vote that night if you want to get right down to it. But,
And Mr. Spurlock, somebody have to weigh in how critical the reason that determination is to be made that early first part of January. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, one of the issues that we're running into is we'll be distributing staff based on the enrollment, what kids are going where, and also there'll be some funding that will go along with that. So I know Mr. Sandvig and I talked about that today concerning that. We would like to see a resolution as quickly as possible. Obviously, we want to do what the board requests, but it would help us as going forward. Because everything's predicated on the number of students that are going to Rockville High School or Rocky Fork Elementary, and how that impacts the other schools that's in the rezoning. The money will follow as per the amount of students. I will say too, there's one other thing I want to mention that Ms. Moore brought up about sports, and I know that I just want to make sure that we're clear on this. Your 9th grade year, you establish your eligibility for the TLOAA. The TLOAA does really not care whether you live in Maryville or Murfreesboro. Once you establish that 9th grade eligibility, then in order to be eligible at another school, you would have to make a bona fide change of address. In the thing of rezoning, if a student chooses to go to wherever he's being displaced, he or she is automatically eligible unless they wait before enrolling in that school in which they were rezoned. In other words, they stayed at the school that they were previously located for a month, and they decide they want to go to that school, they would be ineligible.
Mr. Spurlock, and that begs a really good question. I may be overcomplicating this, but I'm glad you brought that up, because to me, that takes me back to our decision process of grandfathering upcoming seniors. If we're going to draw the zoning lines, but we're going to say, okay, if you're an upcoming senior, if you want to stay where you are to graduate, you can do that. Are we going to be okay with those seniors that are playing
They will still
sports?
be eligible.
They will still be eligible. Okay, okay.
The only way they would become ineligible is if they stay at the school that they're currently located, and then in some time, and they don't like it after 2 weeks.
Right.
They decide to go to that.
Yeah.
They're ineligible.
Right, then they wouldn't be able to play at Rockvale if they decided to move. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that clarification. I would just, Mr. Reed, thank you for your input. The whole idea of making a decision to vote on it this quickly, although, and I certainly understand, Mr. Hodge, where you were coming from and the thought process behind that, but I think at this point, with at least what I feel like we're trying to accomplish this evening, and that is, again, total transparency with our community, that the board is listening and that we are working on addressing these concerns, even if the outcome is what the parents don't want to hear, that to take a vote on anything to do with this quickly with no more notice to them to have an opportunity to be present or to have input, and the fact that we already have another public meeting scheduled, I just don't see how we can do that.
Mr. Chairman, if I might just interject here, and this has been an absolutely terrific swapping out of information here. I just think in general, the discussion about SPED, I would think we'd probably leave those youngsters alone. I see no, and I'm willing to listen, but I don't see any particular reason, certainly an important reason, to move the Seven Oaks from Stewart's Creek to Smyrna. And I absolutely agree on the seniors, rising juniors, that we ought to allow them, if they so choose, if they're rezoned and so choose to stay, we allow them to stay. If they go and want to go, I think that's fine as well. I think I can, well, I believe I could agree with really 2 points of view here on the Blackman, on the BCA, and that is if we wanted to include, we're already including seniors because they're going to be seniors. So if they're BCA members or not doesn't matter. They can go or stay if they so choose. But I think I could support anything below that as well. If we want to do that with juniors and sophomores, I'm okay with that. I think. And if we want to cut it off at after the junior year, but when this program started at Blackman started with nothing, zero, just a new program. Well, there's nothing stopping Rockvale from doing exactly the same thing, and I encourage them to do that, and I understand that they're going to do it. So I think that's terrific, and you all kind of said a couple of things here. Really, there's two sets of problems. The first set is what we're really dealing with right now, even though we've kind of addressed the others. But we're dealing with programs, which is a lot of people, our neighborhoods, which is a lot of people. And we're going to make that decision. The other part of the program that we're not really dealing with because we really can't is the individual student. And parents that want their athlete will say it could be, I think personally that, at least in my experience, that people that are really intense about this are band members. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Well, we've got a protection for the students. They can appeal it to Mr. Evans over here, and if that is not what they consider to be fair, talking about the individual student now, it can be appealed to Mr. Spurlock, and if that does, well, I'll say work. If that doesn't work, they can appeal it to us. Now that's pretty fair, I think. So we're going to protect the individual student, and that's without hearing any further debate or discussion. I think that's kind of in general how I feel. Thank you.
Thank y'all. I think there's a couple of other things that we need to throw into this. When we grandfather, those people will be required to do their own transportation, whatever school to go to. Something else, and Mr. Spurlock, correct me if I'm wrong, students, let's use Blackman since they're sitting in the audience here. Somebody has a waiver to go to Blackman, they get to keep that waiver. It doesn't matter where they live. Is that correct? Or any school. If you've got a waiver to go to a school, you will still attend that school. So that's a couple of questions that were asked. I think that's being more than fair with them. I know Mr. Jordan, I got an email from a mother today that I believe the deadline to apply to Central Magnet School is the 31st, is that correct?
January.
Wanting us to hurry up and make a decision.
Yeah, January.
So, you know, we've got people on both sides, you know, some that want to get it over with and so they can either move on or go wherever they're going. There's a lot of decisions in this that are not going to be easy for us. We know that. I kind of like the schedule we've got. You know, if you look back on the notes we've got from all of these other schools, a lot of them were the same concern. I'm not going to say complaint, but concern. is where they were going. So, you know, I'll do what the board decides, but I'm for keeping our schedule like it is. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Moore and Ms. Johnson, for the work that you put into that. I pretty much concur with my fellow board members on what has already been said. One thing that I would like to add, if possible, is the speds that are at Blackman. If they wanted to go to Rockville, that they could have that option. Maybe it's closer to their home or something like that, but not, I agree with leaving them there. But I would like to see if there would be an option for them if they want to move closer to home or something like that. That's the only thing that I would change.
Let me tack on some support for what Mr. Hodge said too. And I really haven't been through this on the high school level except observing from the county commission. But I do know this: when you grandfather and you drop out of a school and go into middle school or even elementary school, you're creating a lot of problems for yourself and for your school system, because it's very difficult to keep up with. And as we have said before, there's 1,600 or 1,700 people that are going to be privileged and I hope honored, and they're going to love it when they go to Rockvale. They are, and our history of opening new schools tells us this. It does. I mean, when Siegel opened and the screaming from the Oakland students, you know, and what happened? Well, then 3 or 4 weeks, they've forgotten all about it. And a lot of the faculty went, and Siegel and it happened at Blackman, and it certainly happened at Stewart's Creek, which we all remember. And now they don't want to leave. And I get that. I understand that. Also, something that Ms. Moore said that I should have tacked on to what I said and just reiterate. We didn't comment during these 3 community meetings for very obvious reasons, so we could collect information and just listen and all that kind of stuff. But I can assure them, if my word means anything, this board does care about these students and teachers in the individual schools. This is just tough, and we'll get it done, and I hope that it will be in the benefit of the large majority of students.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Anybody else?
I'd just like to echo what Mr. Jordan just said there. And, you know, we're still collecting information. We just got information here tonight. So it's really, for me, it's too early to be discussing a lot of this information. But I have no problem with what's been discussed here tonight. I don't know that you couldn't have discussed it a week ago or 2 weeks ago, last time I had a meeting. I think there's been plenty of opportunities for anybody to bring up anything they want to bring to the meeting and share their ideas. But I can go along with what's been said here tonight. I remember Seven Oaks when we was going through Blackman. They didn't want to go to Stewart's Creek. That transition happened, and it was smooth. So, myself, for personal experience, I lived in Texas in the 70s. And I was zoned to 3 different schools in 2 years. And so, you know, growth happens, but the main thing is these kids are resilient. They can make it through it. Parents may not be, but the kids, they can make it through these difficult times. They'll bounce back.
Well, it happened at Riverdale, Oakland. I mean, it happened in the first 2 months of when they opened. And they rezoned a number of students, and there was much discussion of that, but hey, it worked out fine. Everything was okay. The kids will rebound. Maybe the parents don't rebound quite as fast. I'm not sure. But.
So, if I may, Mr. Young, just to kind of follow up on your comment, I guess to me it raises a question of if this is since we do still have input coming in and we do still have another public meeting. If this is too premature for us to have these kind of leading up to the decision-making vote conversation, then when are we going to do it?
I'm just saying, anybody I think could voice their opinions at any of these meetings, just like we did tonight, in general discussion. And from for me personally, I'd just rather wait till the night we're supposed to vote, and that way we can get everything out on the table at one time. But, you know, I think if we'd been through the other meetings, what we discussed here tonight, I think everybody here would be ready to vote if we'd already been through those meetings.
Any other comment?
Well, is there a feeling on the board, and I understand, Mr. Estes, am I reading this right? You want to meet on the 7th, which is a public meeting and not a work session, so that we can entertain comment that night. And you want to keep our schedule the same and vote the next night?
Well, that's what we voted on.
Yep.
What, 6 months ago?
Yeah.
And we've been working on this for close to 2 years now. So I don't know that one more meeting is going to make a lot of difference. To me, it might to somebody else. I don't know.
I'm okay either way. I want to vote the next night. I mean, we've been telling them, you know, 7th and 8th.
And we need to get teachers assigned to schools.
Yep.
We need to give students the opportunity, if they don't want to go to that school, to apply to Central or wherever they want to go. That would give them time for that.
So I would anticipate that the motion that's put forward on the night that we're going to vote is going to be a rather complicated one, and I'm not trying to overcomplicate it, but with all of these concerns, I mean, we've addressed two of the big elephants in the room tonight, and I think it sounds to me like we pretty much have a consensus moving forward on Seven Oaks and Black Collegiate Academy. But as we all know, there are other smaller elephants, maybe not so small, in the room as well that we heard so much feedback from at this last meeting that is pretty much a new rallying cry to asking us to grandfather all the juniors as well. And that's what I was talking about when I said tough conversations, but that we still need to be transparent. And, you know, then we've got these other subdivisions that are also still very concerned about them being in the zoning line that they are. So I guess, again, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, how does that process look like from, if we're truly going to give the public the opportunity to give more feedback or ask more questions? Because I will tell you, and one thing I do want to share is I have had several phone calls the last couple of days from individuals with concerns that really haven't so much come out as far as the specifics of that school location or whatever at these meetings. And one of the questions I put back to one of the parents is, why wasn't somebody from your group that's concerned about this, why didn't they come speak? And the answer I got was, you cut it off, they were in line to speak the other night and they didn't get to. So again, we can't satisfy everybody. I know we can't make decisions to make everybody happier. We won't open a new high school, but I think some of those other things still need to be really discussed amongst us so that we have a consensus that we can have a clear and concise meeting on the 8th with a motion that makes sense.
If I could jump in there, we've received transcribed from every one of our meetings, and I think you've identified I'm going to take a wild guess, 85% of the things that brought up. So my thing is, if you went into the meeting, talking about this is something, this 85%, and you allow the 15% to speak. I mean, we've heard BCA at every meeting, and I'm going to say somewhere around 60 to 80% of that. And we've heard Seven Oaks probably at 60, 70%. Now, we did hear earlier in the process, I think the first meeting, we heard stuff like JROTC. We heard CTE programs. Now, one of the things I was trying to get at with the CTE programs, usually those course of studies, which they are, do not always start 9th grade year. They start the 10th grade year. The state does give some latitude in terms of substituting that first course in case someone gets into another program. So if we wanted to, we could start off the meeting with, just like our objective tonight, we have identified these two things that the board seems to have a consensus on. So as we go forward, would you, if you fall into those categories, would you just remain seated so that you can allow others who still have concerns?
I think that's a fabulous suggestion. Great idea.
Also, we don't have to have one motion. We can have a motion on each individual thing. And because you're right, it's going to get pretty complicated when you start mentioning seniors and SPED and on and on. And I think we could just do it one at a time. I think we'll be all right. And Mr. Director, that's what you just said is really good. I think that's correct. I couldn't, 6 weeks ago, I couldn't have told you where Seven Oaks was, and now I know exactly where it is and where everybody lives. And I understand. I get it.
And I think that would go a long way, too, in kind of calming some of these passions, with that being, as you pointed out, Mr. Director, such a large portion or percentage of the concerns, that if those parents can, even if they still want to come to that meeting, they can do so with a sense of relief and not so much sense of urgency that we've got to have 20 people in line to make sure we get the board's attention, because they obviously have. So
right. All I would need from you guys is what you want. I mean, what y'all have the consent. I think I hear it, but I want to make sure that what the consensus is on those things.
Sounds good to me. Well, we can have a motion on every concern if we need to, but
I guess what you're asking for, Mr. Spurlock, is number one, I think the groups and boards in agreement as far as seniors go. I think we're in agreement with Seven Oaks. I think we're in agreement with the special ed kids. If I'm missing something else right off the bat, and the Collegiate Academy.
I guess the thing on the Collegiate Academy, sophomores and juniors, would that be included in Collegiate Academy? I think
Correct. That would be my wishes. I don't know about the rest of the board.
They're already fully engaged in
the ones that are already fully engaged. Got you.
I'd like to know the result of the numbers. But evidently it's not near as bad as I thought it was.
And I think
Ms. Johnson for that.
You can, Ms. Johnson, you may have
58 additional without the senior. I think it was 94 total. The seniors, sophomores, juniors, seniors, it's 94 total, and I think allowing the sophomores and juniors was 58, I believe. So.
Oh, this is great.
I had the numbers at, it's 89 of
total
students.
Total?
Count the seniors.
Well, it's 94 total, but 89 would be at Rockvale, not including the seniors.
I was just talking about the ones that would stay there. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this all goes again to Ms. Johnson's point, and especially with this being so much a part of her district and her zone, that we don't start that school year off with our brand new high school already almost at capacity. So, but Mr. Director, going back to what you were saying, if I understood correctly, what you're really asking us for is a consensus on how you present this at the January 7th meeting.
Right.
To be able to make sure that those people that haven't had a chance.
Heard, right.
And my perspective, my feedback is I agree. I think it's a good idea, and I'm absolutely all for, since we obviously have the consensus on these 3 or 4 items, what the board's just, not decision, but what we're looking at moving forward, for you to be able to say at the beginning of that meeting, and you can refer them back to even watching this work session if you like, that those determinations have already been fully discussed by the board, and that we're going to request that, other individuals, parents with different concerns be allowed.
I think that would give them an opportunity to be heard, you know.
Thank you for that.
I do have one question. Do we have any other high schools that have a program like Collegiate Academy that we would have to grandfather those students also?
The only ones you would have would be, right now, we only have the IB program and that, you know, that they are zone, those that are internally and those that are zone exemption. And I think it was mentioned that zone exemptions would be recognized.
Anybody else? Okay. If there's any other question on zone lines or anything, we have Mr. Morgan here, and I'm sure he can answer any question.
Well, I guess a question for you and for Mr. Morgan would be, given the consensus that we've come to, when we go into that January 7th meeting, then will we be looking at a map that will clearly show that zoning line for Seven Oaks moved back to where it was? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right, good meeting. Appreciate all the hard work. We'll be adjourned.